brief intro to OUGHT, chat about an example of illicit strategy and how we're doing an empirical reasoning breakdown, and then I'll do a demo of our tool. Briefly, OUGHT is a nonprofit machine learning research lab. We are trying to make progress on open-ended complex reasoning. And while doing that, making sure that we're deploying language models in a way that's safe and aligned. So questions like, what policies should we implement to reduce homelessness? Is a certain claim true? What makes good alignment research? These are complex because it's like hard for humans to actually make progress on these. We don't even know what a good process is. We don't know what a good answer is. But like, it's really important to push these forward for society. One of the ways we're doing that is by building illicit.org, which is a research tool. It's live. You can go check it out. Not right now, but and then we have 12,000 monthly research users, mostly empirical researchers right now that we're thinking about how to expand to machine learning and alignment. And then we also have a research branch working on factored cognition research at ice.ought.org. I won't chat about that now, but very happy to chat about that later if you're interested. So what is the strategy that we're doing with illicit? So we're basically talking to a lot of researchers, understanding what is the existing human research workflow to do the reasoning to answer these questions. How do we break that down into smaller pieces and then automate those smaller pieces with language models? So for those who are not familiar with language models, very roughly, these are algorithms for predicting text. And so you might have seen with OpenAI's GPT-3, we can now do things like generate text, generate articles, semantic search over text that's meaningfully similar to each other. So that's the approach that we're taking with illicit. There's lots of reasons why we're taking this strategy. But some of the most important ones, first is that language models are much more capable of doing these smaller tasks than they are of like just answering these complex questions immediately. So it's a lot easier to get a language model. It's a lot harder to get a language model just to answer, is this paper high quality evidence, than it is to break that down into smaller pieces and get it to answer what is the sample size of this paper. And then with this approach, by having the reasoning process, we get systems that are easy to evaluate and interpret. So when you get an answer, you can go back and check, did we trust the reasoning process? If something goes wrong in the answer, you can figure out where did that happen. And there's also a lot of like other reasons why we think this is going to lead to much more aligned systems, which I couldn't fit into a bullet point, but I'm happy to chat about. Cool, so here's an example to make it concrete of a kind of breakdown that we're trying to emulate with illicit. So a question that you might ask that's pretty important is something like, should we fund iron supplementation interventions? So the first thing you want to know is what is the evidence that exists out there for how iron supplementation might affect anemia, for example. And then here you want to understand, like, let's find all the papers that contain relevant evidence. For example, randomized control trials on iron supplementation and anemia. Then for each piece of evidence, you want to know, is this evidence actually high quality? Can I trust it? Can I update on it? We've worked a lot with GiveWell researchers. GiveWell is the charity recommendation organization, and they have a process that they use for evaluating evidence, which is called strength of evidence. And they take RCTs, and then they ask a series of questions about it to evaluate, is this high quality evidence? Like, is the effect intent to treat? What is the sample size? What's the attrition rate? And then once you have your high quality evidence, you then want to ask, like, what should I conclude from this? How do I synthesize all the evidence into some kind of answer? And get back an answer. So now I will show you how we're doing this with illicit. So let me switch screens. Okay, is this big enough? Can everyone see this? Yep. Cool, okay. So here we can start by asking a research question. So we can ask a similar question to what we just looked at. How does iron supplementation affect anemia? And so illicit gives us back a bunch of different papers. Here on left, we have a synthesis. I'll get to that in a sec. And because this is an empirical question, we want to start with, let's actually just look at randomized control trials. And then let's look at papers that have a PDF so that we can actually go inside and look at the papers. So then we do semantic search to give you back over 200 million papers. Here are the ones we think are most relevant to your query, even if you didn't use exactly the right keywords. And then we pull out a bunch of information about the paper. And this is using GPT-3 Instruct. So we give you, here's the takeaway from the abstract, like what is the sort of like gist of the argument. Here's who they did it on. Here's what the intervention was. Here's the duration of the intervention. And then we also let you add your own information or additional information. So here we can add number of participants, and this tells us what was the sample size. And then if we want to sort by this, then we can look at, okay, here are the randomized controlled trials on this topic that have like the most participants that we might want to look at first. So then one of the phases of research is first, okay, let me like filter down to the papers that I like are actually relevant for me to read. So we can go through and say like, okay, this one looks pretty relevant. This one looks like maybe not that relevant. This one looks relevant, so on and so forth. And then once we've found a few, we can go one level deeper. And now we want to know, okay, what is this paper actually saying? How should I update from it? And also, how much can I trust it? So we give you a summary, intervention, outcomes they looked at, participants. And then we have this panel here, which is risk of bias. And so this is actually taken from a lot of what GiveWell does. So we give you like, what is the study design? What is the funding source? Because often you can identify conflicts of interest by looking at that. How many participants were there? And then pieces about how the analysis was done. So were there multiple comparisons? One of the things we hear a lot from researchers is in order to trust the output of a language model, they need to see the context. There's like this really important transparency piece around like, okay, but show me where this came from. And so we let you look at where exactly we got the answer from. And so you can verify that this was actually a good answer, and you can trust what the language model is outputting. You can also ask questions about the paper, and then it'll, again, do the same thing, answer the question, and take you to the part of the paper that answers it. And then so that's sort of the like, let's verify the evidence and let's help people figure out which of the evidence they can trust the most. Once you've done that, we can give back of the top evidence that you looked at, here is a synthesis. So here, the evidence is mixed. Some papers suggest that it does improve anemia, some papers suggest that it doesn't. And you can go into the papers and check that this is actually what they're saying. Yeah, so that is, go back here. Yeah, so this is all done using language models. Yeah. Sorry, I'll share my screen again. Yeah. Perfect, quick recap. So we're working on automating complex reasoning. One of the ways we're doing this is building elicit.org, and the strategy is break research workflows down into smaller components, automate them with language models, and you can try it out. Yeah, that's it.
So the filtering is based on the abstract of the papers, at least that the demo that you showed, or you look into the body of the paper. And if it's the body, how can you access copyright protected content? Because usually we must have subscription to libraries and so on in order to get the papers.
Yeah, so some of it's the abstract, but whenever we have the full paper, we use the full paper. And the way we do that is through open access. So it's just papers that are already open access. Or you can upload your own papers and then do the analysis over the full paper of the ones you've uploaded.
Yeah, Robert, you can ask a question, then you can come up because you're next.
Okay. So what's the quality evaluation of these things? Are you guys peer review, or how do we know if these are good?
Yeah, so there's two branches, I guess. For our research branch, we collect a lot of gold standards. And so we do manual and automatic evaluation against how well are our questions performing compared to the gold standards. For product, we do similar. We do like manual, contractor, and like internal evaluation. And then also a lot of it is user-provided feedback. So we ask people like, was this good? Was this not good? And it's very much like a human-in-the-loop verification process. So you shouldn't take it at face value. You should go in and check, and then people will tell us.
But how good was it?
So it depends on question. So for some questions, we have like 90% accuracy. For other questions, we have lower accuracy. For very complex questions, like if you try and ask multiple inference step questions, like what is novel about this paper, it's pretty hit or miss. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you
Great.
so much, Amanda. Great.